Hello, everybody, and today's tale is a little bit scary. It comes from Cork and happened around the time of the end of the 1930s, coming into the 1940s. The whole world, or so it seemed, was at war, World War II, and Cork people had a nickname on this. They called it the emergency. It was around this time that a woman lived in Gerald Griffin Street. Her name was Nancy May, and she was the local midwife. Now, in those days, the midwife was the person who was known as the gatekeeper of souls, for she saw the babies that came into the world, bringing them in with her strong, gentle hands. But with her same hand, she knew exactly where to place it on the back of a person that was deep in grief when they had lost somebody that they loved. For she was the woman that was called to wash the body and get people ready to meet their maker. You can imagine that she was a very popular woman to the women of the north side of Cork City, and that they called upon her in their time of need. One night, in the middle of the night, there was a terrible banging on her door. As she got up, pinning up her plait into its usual bun, pulling on her old black shawl, going down the stairs to where her medicine bag was always waiting on the chair next to the front door, she thought to herself, is that the Murphy child now, or the Sullivan child, or the O'Connor child, or the Toomey child that's coming? And then she thought, no, there's no woman due for these next 2 weeks. Is it a death then? And with these thoughts in her head, she opened the door. The sight that greeted her there nearly stopped her heart and opened her jaw, for there was the most beautiful looking man she had ever seen in her life. He was over 6 foot tall. He had ink jet black hair, and he had deep blue eyes and skin like white marble. Nancy May, can you come with me now? Our woman is in trouble, he said. Without even thinking about it, she stepped out into Gerald Griffin Street, closing her front door behind her. But then she noticed there was a perfect silence. Have you ever been on a city street and had a perfect silence? There wasn't a moth flying. There was nobody singing coming home from work. There was no sound. The old people would say that when this happens, when there's a perfect silence, that the veil is thinning and that the worlds are merging. Nancy May followed the beautiful looking man up towards the North Chapel. And just outside of this holy place, there was a carriage with 2 white horses. She looked at how it was made and noticed that it was so perfectly made that she couldn't see any glue or screws or nails. It looked as if it had been carved out of one piece of wood. And then she noticed the horses, both standing stock still, both perfect, moon white with not a blemish. And then it was that she noticed the stars low and bright in the sky, and the moon as close to the earth as she had ever been. The man held out his hand, which was cool to the touch, and Nancy May hopped up into the carriage. He turned it with the ease of turning something like that was liquid, and they headed off down Gerald Griffin Street, left up to Sun Valley Drive, and all to where up the hill towards where Knocknaheeny is today. Then they turned right and started going out the old country road. She knew where they were going. They were going towards the Black Stone Bridge, a place that no human being would be seen in the dark of night. As they approached the Black Stone Bridge and the hillock right next to it, he started to giddy up the horses to make them go faster and faster and faster. and Nancy May became afraid. She put her hands up over her face, for she was sure that they were going to crash. But when she took her hands down again, they were inside the little hillock, Cautionary, the hill of the fairies. And then she noticed that in this place the man was not unusual, for here every single person was perfect in stature, in bone structure, in the colour of their hair. She was noticing this when she heard the screams of the woman, and her long years' experience and her training kicked in. She'd hopped down off the carriage. She found the woman. 3 times that night, she had to turn the baby in the belly of the woman. 3 times that night, she did not know if that woman would make it. But as the dawn began to break, the child came into the world. She cleaned it, kissed it on the forehead, and gave it to the mum, just like she had done hundreds of times before. When this was done, the beautiful man stood in front of her again, between her and the woman. Now, Nancy May, thank you very much for the great deed and service that you gave us here today. But I am going to give you 3 bits of advice. Take this in payment for your great deed. And he handed her a purse. It was so perfect, no seam in it, and the leather as soft as she had ever felt. And when she looked inside, she could see coins of gold and silver. She took it from him with gratitude and put it in a place where nobody would go after it. And what are the other 2 things? She said. 1, he said, take nothing from this place that you have not been offered, and keep your hands on your laps as you leave this place. All right, so, she said, I'll do that. And am I to know your name? No, he said, it's better that you don't know my name. And with that, he put his hand out and she took it, and he helped her into the carriage one more time. As she was leaving, she noticed that there was more and more of the she coming home after their night being out in the human world, tired now. And as they came in, they dipped their fingers into a font-like structure just inside the door of Cautionary. As she was going out, she couldn't help it. Her hand seemed to have a life of its own. It went out of the carriage and she dipped into the font herself. She realized she couldn't bless herself with this water. And then she noticed that these people, they were putting it to their eyes. So she put her wet finger to her eye. Well, that did nothing at all, she thought to herself, as they left Cautionary and retraced her steps back to Gerald Griffin Street. She felt so energized, as if she'd had a great night's sleep. She hopped down out of the carriage. Nobody was awake yet in Gerald Griffin Street. She opened her front door, went out to the back garden, and there she noticed that the birds were singing sweet tunes, so sweet, like they had never sung before. And then she noticed that in her garden, that the leaves of her herbs were fatter and tastier than they had ever been. She plucked a few for her morning omelette and then went in search of an egg. She noticed then that the chickens, instead of laying 1 egg, were now laying 2. She noticed that the goat gave so much milk that there was some left over for sale. And so it was, she hardly had a need to leave her cottage. But you know, and I know, that it's lovely to get out after being a while cooped in. So the day came when she decided to take some of her coins into the cold quay of Cork City. Have you ever been to Cork City? Have you ever stood in the cold quay in front of where TK Maxx is now? If you stand there and you look across the road, you will see a kind of square, empty place. It looks in shadow, even on a sunny day. It feels as if it could be haunted. And perhaps it is. And perhaps this is the day that it started. For that used to be the old mart in Cork City. And the farmers would come up with their cattle and their sheep and their chickens to trade and to sell. Nancy May noticed a beautiful red cow in there. She checked it from the tip of its nose to the tip of its tail. She liked the girth of it, the feel of her. And she was thinking, if I buy her and bring her up to Ger Griffin Street and bring her into my backyard, well, I can sell milk from her and we'll keep one another company. And with happy thoughts like this, and looking over the back of the cow, she noticed the woman from Connaught-na-Shee. "Hello, girl," she says. "How are you? And how's the bonny baby?" The woman looked at her. She couldn't believe that she'd been seen. And then she went out into the cold quay itself. And if she did, Nancy May followed her. "Well," she said, "and how are you, girl? And how's the bonny baby?" And the woman said, "Can you see me?" "Of course, girl. Sure, aren't I talking to you?" said Nancy May. The people of Cork said that Nancy had suddenly begun talking to herself. The woman then came closer to Nancy and said, "Did you take anything that you were not supposed to take?" "Indeed, and I did not," said Nancy May, as honest as the day is long. She said, "Did you touch anything? Did you keep your hands in your laps as you left our place?" Nancy said, "Of course." "Oh, wait a minute." She said, "There was a font and I put my hand into the font and I touched my eye. Is that what you're talking about?" "Which eye did you touch?" said the woman. "Or did you touch both?" "Oh, just one eye. This one," she said. The woman stood right in front of her and put the palm of her hand in front of Nancy May's face. It was the last thing that Nancy May ever saw from that eye. The people of Cork said that she put her hand up to her face and the blood started to pour down through her fingers. They picked her up and brought her to the North Infirmary, where they patched the eye as best they could. Nancy May took to wearing her hair down over her eye, for she didn't want anyone to see it. Nobody wanted the strange woman with the shake in her hand to help them at their time of birthing, or to put that shaky hand on their back when their grief was high. So Nancy lost her work. But more than that, her garden faded, the chickens died, the goat followed. Nothing grows in that garden in Ger Griffin Street, even to this day. And her lovely letterbox that always had a shine became dull. But the women of Cork, they never forgot her. They opened their doors to Nancy May. There was always a bowl of soup and a sandwich waiting for her, and she'd tell her tale, and she'd say to the children of Cork, "So, children, if you ever see a fairy, don't tell anyone."